Without objection.
Mr. President and colleagues, if I started the workday with the opportunity to help 16 million kids from low-income families make America more competitive with China, build affordable housing for hundreds of thousands of Americans, and pay for it all by cracking down on fraud, I'd call that a hell of a good day at the office. Tomorrow, we're going to find out if Senate Republicans agree. The vote on the tax bill tomorrow has been more than 6 months in the making. In fact, I've been working on this in a completely bipartisan way for 2 full years. The only reason this didn't get done a long time ago is delay on the part of the Senate Republicans. So, no more delay. It's time to vote. Everybody is going to see where each senator stands. And over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to have a number of my colleagues talk about why this bill is so important. So I'm going to start with just a few key points. For starters, the bill was designed with balance in mind. For every dollar in tax cuts for business, the Joint Committee on Taxation, which is the official scorekeeper of these matters, they have told us that an equal amount goes to children's and families as goes to business. Our focus on families is on those that are walking an economic tightrope. 16 million kids are going to benefit from the bill. 500,000 lifted out of poverty, a huge accomplishment. And it's especially important for the families with modest incomes, families with 2, 3, or 4 kids. Under the current rules, they get discriminated against because those big families get only a single child tax credit regardless of how many kids they have. Think about that. Federal law tells these struggling families that if you got a hard family, we'll try to figure out how to get by splitting a single child tax credit and figure out how 3 or 4 kids can split a pair of shoes. 3 or 4 kids can't do that. They can't split a single meal. This economic discrimination against large families in America ought to end. There's been a lot of talk about who's really looking out for the families. My view is that's going to become clear when the Senate votes tomorrow. We'll see who's actually on the side of the families that need a boost, the families who are facing that kind of economic discrimination I just outlined. I know that my colleagues on this side want to make sure that families can get the assistance they need, and we want to end the discrimination against large families. There's so much in this bill that ought to bring the two sides together. That's certainly what happened in the House, 357 votes. For example, the bill builds 200,000 new affordable housing units. The lack of affordable housing is a nationwide crisis. It's not just blue states and cities, it's everywhere. And housing, you can call me a supply sider. We've got to build and build and build 200,000 new units. In a minute or two, we'll hear from my colleague from Washington State, who has single-handedly led the effort to meet housing needs in America. The bill invests in research and development so we can outcompete China. Changes Republicans made to the tax code back in 2017 slashed the value of the tax incentives for research and development. It's worth only 20% of what it used to be. Republicans have said in 2018, in 2019, in 2020, in 2021, in 22, in 23, and 24, they would fix the research and development tax credit mess that they single-handedly created. Tomorrow's going to be their chance. According to the Treasury Department, 4 million small businesses would benefit from this bill. Picture that, Mr. President, 4 million small businesses, startups, ones that depend so much on research and development to compete with China. Many of them are in fields that compete directly with China and other countries. They want to know why in the world, why would Congress put this off until 2025? A lot of them say, Ron, we're not going to be around in 2025 if you all don't act. The bill also provides help to families and businesses hit by megastorms and mega wildfires. This is so important to the people in my state. I've told them at town hall meetings, I've had almost 1,100 of them, Mr. President, we're going to get this done, because in Oregon and virtually everywhere in our country, so many of our communities have been devastated. As I touched on, 357 votes in the House, Mr. President, doesn't happen by osmosis. You, by and large, on a normal day, you can't get 357 House members to agree to order a piece of apple pie. But that's the kind of support this tax bill had. Left-leaning groups like it, right-leaning groups like it, family organizations like it, faith-based organizations like it, pro-life groups, pro-choice groups across the political spectrum. And in the next day or so, we're going to see if the Republicans who talk so much about these issues, help for small business, help for families, building housing, preventing fraud, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk about it constantly. Now we're going to find out if anybody wants to actually follow through on the rhetoric. I know we do. We believe with the Senate voting now, we've got a chance, as I touched on at the beginning, Mr. President, to have a real day at the office, a day when you help the kids, when you help the families and the small businesses and people who need housing and people who've been devastated with disasters. Get all that done tomorrow, Mr. President. That's one hell of a day at the office. I yield my time now to my colleague from Washington State, our leader on the housing issues, and many others.